It's strange how quickly a house can change its mood. Just a week ago, this place echoed with his voice, his footsteps, his careless humming while shaving in the morning. Now it's quieter, cleaner, lighter, as if the air itself has exhaled. I'm Anna, 40 years old, and I've never felt more aware of that number than I do now. Aware, not ashamed. I like the way I've aged. Gracefully, as they say, but more than that, confidently. I don't chase youth, because I don't need to. I walk into rooms and eyes follow, not because I demand attention, but because I carry myself like someone who knows her worth. And now that he's gone, my husband, my ex, I feel that truth even more deeply. It started last Friday. A message popped up on my phone from a friend I hadn't heard from in weeks. You need to see this. No context, just a photo attached. A blurry snapshot from a downtown cafe. But clear enough to see him. Sitting with a girl who couldn't have been more than 25, leaning in close, smiling that lazy smile I used to think was just for me. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the audacity. That he thought I wouldn't find out. That he thought I'd forgive him. That he believed, after everything I've built, I'd still need him. So I kicked him out. No drama. No yelling. Just a quiet, controlled fury as I handed him a duffel bag and shut the door behind him. He didn't argue. I think he knew the moment I saw the photo he'd already lost. He's been trying to crawl back ever since. Calling. Messaging. Showing up outside like a rain-soaked dog who lost his way. I ignore him. Let him sit with the silence he gave me for years. Let him learn what it feels like to be unnecessary. Because that's what he was. He never fixed a thing in this house, never took the initiative, never made me feel seen. In bed, it was like hosting a guest you wished would leave early, polite, predictable, underwhelming. He was a man who coasted through life, relying on my spark to give him light. And I'm done lighting fires for people who won't keep them burning. What he doesn't know is that I was never really afraid of being alone. The truth? I've always had someone who sees me. Luca. My son. 17. Technically adopted, but that word has never meant much to us. He came into my life when he was just a child, silent and skittish, his world shaped by uncertainty. I made him a promise then, without words, that I would never abandon him, that I'd be the one constant in his life. And now? He's the one grounding me. It was Luca who found me the night I kicked his father out. I had curled up on the kitchen floor, a glass of wine half drunk and a rage bubbling just beneath the surface. I didn't hear him come in, but I felt him sit beside me. He didn't ask questions. He didn't offer empty comfort. He just leaned against my shoulder and stayed. That kind of presence, quiet and strong, is rare in anyone, let alone a teenager. He didn't say anything until I wiped my face and stood up. You okay, Mom? He asked, his voice deeper now than it used to be, calm like still water. I will be, I said. And I meant it. Luca has always admired my independence. He tells me that sometimes, how he watches me manage everything alone, fix what's broken, stand my ground. It's humbling, hearing that from him. Especially now, when I feel like all I've done is fail. But to him, I'm still whole. Still powerful. That first evening alone, we made dinner together. Nothing fancy, just pasta and grilled vegetables, but it felt like a ritual. Like something was beginning again. We didn't talk about his father. We didn't need to. Instead, we laughed. He teased me about the way I chop onions too slowly. I threw a piece at him. It landed in his hair, and for a moment, I saw the child in him again. But he's not a child anymore. That's the part that unsettles me sometimes. How he looks at me now. It's not inappropriate, at least I don't think so, but it's different. It's the way a young man sees someone he respects, someone he's drawn to. And I try to ignore that thought, tuck it somewhere quiet in my mind. But I'd be lying if I said I hadn't noticed. Still, I'm his mother. His guide. His anchor. I sit now in the living room, curled into the corner of the sofa, a book open on my lap. I haven't turned the page in 10 minutes. Luca's upstairs, probably finishing homework or watching something on his laptop. The house is quiet, but it doesn't feel empty. It feels expectant. I don't know what tomorrow brings. I don't know how long I'll keep ignoring the messages from my ex. But I do know this, I'm not waiting anymore. For love. For validation. For permission. I'm living. On my terms. And for the first time in a long time, that feels enough. The following days passed with a kind of stillness I wasn't used to. Not the heavy silence that lingered during the last years of my marriage. This was different.
Softer.
Like the house was adjusting to its new rhythm, as if it, too, was taking a breath after holding it for far too long. Luca had been more present than ever. He'd started joining me for morning coffee, even though I knew he didn't care for it. He'd sit at the kitchen table, his fingers curled around the warm mug, eyes still sleepy, his hair tousled in a way that made him look both grown and impossibly young. "You don't even like coffee," I teased one morning, raising an eyebrow at him over my cup. He smirked. "It's not about the coffee." I blinked, caught off guard by the honesty in his tone. He didn't elaborate and I didn't push him. But I couldn't stop thinking about that simple sentence all day. It wasn't about the coffee. He was choosing to be near me. Not out of obligation, not because I asked, but because he wanted to. And something about that stirred a part of me I hadn't touched in a long time. That evening, we cooked again. I had music playing softly through the speaker, an old playlist I hadn't touched in years. Luca hummed along to the melody of a song that was popular before he was even born. It made me laugh. "How do you know this one?" "You sing it when you clean," he said casually, dicing garlic with surprising precision. I guess it stuck. I stared at him, a little stunned. How many things had he noticed about me that I had forgotten were noticeable? How many moments had he quietly stored away, like treasured keepsakes? We ate at the kitchen island, close enough for our elbows to touch. The conversation drifted from school to memories of vacations, to stories of when he was a kid. We laughed so hard I cried at one point, and when I wiped my cheek, I felt his gaze lingering on me. Not out of concern, but something gentler, warmer. That night, as I was turning off lights and locking the back door, I passed by the living room where he was stretched out on the couch, a blanket wrapped loosely around him, a book resting on his chest. He wasn't reading. He was just watching the ceiling, lost in thought. "Hey," I said softly, pausing in the doorway. He turned to look at me, his eyes soft and unreadable. "Hey, you okay?" He nodded. "I just like this." "Like what?" "This," he said, motioning vaguely around the quiet room.
Us. You.
"Here. Like this." It was such a simple truth. But the way he said it, quiet, reverent, it caught me off guard again. "I like it too," I whispered. I stood there a second too long. He didn't break eye contact. There was something in the way he looked at me, like I was something to protect. Something sacred. And I felt my heart stir in my chest in a way I hadn't let it in years. The next day, he offered to help me organize the garage. We spent hours sorting through boxes, laughing at old photos and marveling at how much junk we'd accumulated over the years. At one point, while I was trying to lift a heavy crate, he came up behind me and gently took it from my hands. "I've got it," he said, his voice close to my ear. The brush of his arm against mine wasn't dramatic. It wasn't deliberate, but it left a warmth that lingered long after he carried the box away. I stood there, hand still in the air, as if my body hadn't caught up with my mind. That evening, we watched a movie together on the couch. At some point, I felt his head gently rest against my shoulder. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. My heart beat a little faster, but I didn't move away. Instead, I let my cheek rest against his hair. It was innocent, and yet it wasn't. I could feel his breath slow, the weight of him anchoring me in a way I hadn't realized I needed. It was the safest I had felt in months, maybe years. When the movie ended, he sat up slowly, his hand brushing mine as he reached for the remote.
I didn't pull away, and he didn't either.
There was something unspoken in the air between us. Not a confession, not a crossing of lines, just a shift. A shared awareness that we had stepped into something deeper. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my thoughts spiraling gently. I wasn't ashamed. I wasn't confused. I was curious. Curious how things might change. Curious how much closer we might grow. Curious if, maybe, the love I poured into him had created something even stronger in return. It started with a storm. The kind that rolls in slowly, the sky darkening by degrees until everything is bathed in deep blue shadows. Thunder cracked just as I was pulling laundry off the line, wind tugging at the sheets like they were trying to escape the moment. I barely made it back inside before the rain came down in sheets. Luca was already home, upstairs in his room. I called for him as I shook droplets from my arms, laughing at how soaked I'd gotten. He appeared at the top of the stairs, towel slung around his neck, hair damp from a shower, a grin breaking across his face when he saw me. "You look like you lost a fight with the sky," he teased. "I did," I said, wringing out my hair. "The sky won." He disappeared for a moment and came back with a dry hoodie. "Here." I slipped it on without thinking. It was soft, oversized, and it smelled like him, soap and something warm I couldn't name. His eyes lingered on me for a second longer than necessary, and I saw something flicker there, something that made my stomach tighten. But he said nothing, just turned and walked to the kitchen. We spent the evening inside, the rain clattering against the windows like applause. The power flickered once, then cut out completely. For a moment, everything went silent, except the rain. I lit candles, and Luca brought out an old camping lantern from the garage. It cast a soft, golden light across the living room, turning the walls into a canvas of flickering shadows. "Feels like we're in a cabin," he said, settling on the floor with a blanket draped around his shoulders. "Yeah," I said, settling next to him. Like the world paused, just for us. We played cards for a while, our laughter soft and unhurried. It was quiet intimacy, the kind that sneaks up on you. At one point, our hands touched while reaching for the same card. I didn't pull mine away. Neither did he. I felt his eyes on me, not in a way that demanded anything, but in a way that saw everything. "You always do that," he said softly. "Do what?" "Smile like you're trying to hide it." I glanced at him, heart thudding. Maybe I am.
Why?
"Because I'm terrified of what's happening," I wanted to say. "Because I'm afraid of where this could go." Instead, I shrugged. "Habit." Luca leaned closer, just enough for the space between us to hum with something silent and fierce. I could feel the heat of him, the steady rhythm of his breath. My pulse quickened. "Do you miss him?" he asked, voice low. "No," I answered truthfully. "Not even a little." His gaze didn't waver. "You deserve more." The air between us grew heavy, charged. He reached out and gently tucked a damp strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers brushed my cheek, slow, careful. I didn't move. "I don't want you to feel alone," he said. "I'm not," I whispered. Our faces were close, too close. I could see the faint line of a scar just beneath his eye, the one he got when he fell off his bike as a kid. I'd cleaned the blood myself. I remembered how he clutched my hand that day, how fiercely he'd trusted me even then. And now here we were, years later, sitting on the edge of something vast and dangerous. His hand lingered at my jaw, thumb grazing my skin. I felt his breath, warm, uncertain, against my lips. 1 second more, and I would have closed the distance. 1 second more, and we would have crossed a line neither of us could uncross. But I pulled away, just slightly, just enough. His hand dropped slowly to his lap, his eyes searching mine for understanding or forgiveness. "I'm sorry," he said, barely above a whisper. I reached for his hand, not to pull him back, but to anchor him. "No," I said, my voice trembling. "Don't be." Because I wasn't. It hadn't been wrong. It had just been real. And in that moment, we both knew something had changed between us, forever. The next morning, the house was still and silvered in the soft light of early spring rain. Luca had already left for his friend's birthday party. He'd mentioned it over breakfast with a casual smile and a teasing note in his voice, something about needing a night to hang out with people who don't fold his laundry. I laughed, even though I knew I'd miss him. It would be the first time I was truly alone since I kicked my husband out.
A whole day.
Just me. No Luca, no him, no one else. The idea sat strangely in my chest, half relief, half weightless fear. I walked through the quiet house after he left, my fingers trailing along the back of the couch, touching the edges of photos and books as if reacquainting myself with the space I lived in.
It was my house now. Mine.
At first, the silence felt too loud. But I caught myself before the sadness could settle.
No.
I wouldn't let today feel hollow. So I gave it to myself. I lit candles, played soft music I loved but hadn't listened to in years. In the bathroom, I prepared a tray with all the little jars and creams and masks I'd been saving for someday.
Today was someday.
I exfoliated, steamed, scrubbed. I slathered lotion on my legs, wrapped my hair in a towel, painted my nails a deep, wine-red shade that made me smile to myself. I drank a glass of wine as I soaked in the bath, my toes peeking through the bubbles. The warmth wrapped around me like something sacred, something earned. I wasn't just healing, I was reclaiming. By the time evening settled, I felt soft, open, not lonely, but aware of my own presence in a way I hadn't felt in years. The house was dim, the wine warm in my chest. I changed into a thin robe, loosely tied at the waist, and padded quietly through the hall toward my bedroom, the feel of the carpet beneath my feet strangely intimate. The bedroom smelled like lavender from a sachet I'd placed under the pillows. I let the robe slip from one shoulder as I climbed onto the bed. A quiet sigh escaped me as I reached into the drawer beside my nightstand and pulled out the pink toy I kept hidden away, my small rebellion against the years of empty touch and one-sided desire. I settled against the pillows, letting my eyes close. It was about knowing myself, claiming what was mine, my peace, my pulse, my pleasure. And just as I felt the tension rise in my body, tightening like the quiet before a thunderstorm, I heard it. A knock. Then the door opened. I gasped, pulling the sheet over me instinctively. Lucas stood in the doorway, backlit by the soft hallway light, his hand still on the knob, his brow furrowed with innocent concern. "Mom," my heart dropped into my stomach. Time seemed to freeze around the sound of my own breath. What are you doing?" he asked, his voice quiet, confused, as he stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I sat up quickly, clutching the blanket to my chest, my cheeks burning. "I thought you were at the party," I managed to say, my voice thin and too high. He took a step closer. I was. But it was loud and kind of boring, and I just felt like coming home. His eyes dropped, just briefly, and I saw it the moment realization hit. Not disgust, not shock, just understanding. His gaze met mine again, softer now. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice cracked just slightly. I didn't mean to interrupt anything. The room was filled with silence, the kind that wasn't empty, but full of something thick and unnamed. I swallowed, still frozen in place. "It's okay. Just give me a minute." Luca nodded once, slowly, and backed toward the door, his eyes never leaving mine. "Of course," he said gently. "I'll wait downstairs." And just like that, he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him. I sat there, heart pounding, the sheet still wrapped around me, the toy now silent beneath it. And I exhaled. Not in shame. Not in regret. Just the breath of someone who realized, in one instant, how deeply their world had changed. I didn't go downstairs right away. Instead, I stayed in my room for a long while, heart still galloping in my chest, staring at the soft folds of the blanket, as if it could tell me how to make sense of what had just happened. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel like solitude anymore. It felt like waiting. Like something unsaid had been left in the room, and both of us had heard it. When I finally made my way downstairs, the lights were dim, and Luca was sitting on the couch, his long frame curled into the cushions, eyes fixed on the dark TV screen as if it might flicker to life and give him a distraction. He turned at the sound of my steps, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. "I didn't mean to walk in on you," he said quietly, his voice even softer than before. I nodded. "I know." He looked down at his hands, then up at me again. "It's just, I didn't want to be at that party. I didn't want to be anywhere else but here. My chest tightened. Luca. I know, he said quickly, reading the hesitation in my voice. I know we can't.
I know what this looks like.
But I can't pretend I haven't felt it. There it was. All the unsaid moments, the charged silences, the lingering glances. It had always been more than gratitude, more than affection. There was a thread between us, delicate but strong, and we had been tugging at it for weeks. I stepped closer, slowly, until I was standing just in front of him. His eyes searched mine, not pleading, not pushing, just waiting. And something inside me gave way. Maybe it was the wine still warming my blood. Maybe it was the vulnerability of being seen so fully by someone who'd never judged me. Maybe it was just that we were finally standing at the edge of something we could no longer ignore.
I leaned in.
It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't frantic. It was slow. I felt his breath first, then the hesitation in his hand as it hovered at my waist, unsure if it was allowed. I closed the distance between us. His lips met mine, soft and searching. And the world went still. It wasn't the kiss of recklessness. It was the kiss of every glance that had said too much, of every moment we'd tiptoed around what we felt. His hand found my cheek, tentative, and I melted into him, not because I was weak, but because I felt safe. He pulled back first, breath trembling. Was that real? He asked, voice barely a whisper. I touched my fingers to my lips. I think it always was. We sat there, close but not touching, the moment hanging between us like a fragile glass ornament, beautiful and dangerous all at once. Outside, the rain had started again. And inside, we were no longer pretending.